Alright, so here we are starting the next assignment in our series of scapes that we've been working on here in computer art, and started with a fall landscape, moved into a spacescape, and now we're going to look at adding some other textures and things in Photoshop and making kind of a desert landscape this time with a pyramid. So what we're going to do to get started is we will start by setting up new document, blank file, the usual dimensions. Go to inches, 10 inches, by 8 inches, and a resolution of 150. And call this pyramid, and say OK. So what we will do to get started, I'll take our selection brush, make it a good size, make sure we are adding to selection, and we'll go ahead and make sure you have a hard-edged brush chosen, one that's a hard edge, and then bump up the size so that you have enough to get started with. We'll make a bit of kind of a slope type landscape shape here. Maybe make a couple of ridges in there. Great. So what we're going to add to this is we're going to take our fill bucket. And when you have your fill bucket, you have a checkbox here that goes pattern. So usually you're just going to fill with the color. But if you click pattern here, you can get some options in this window and some other options. If we go over to the side arrow here, you have some different things, rock patterns we have here, so things that will be useful to this project, things like dirt, textured tile, marble, rock wall, different stone textures in here, as well as on the first default we had a sand texture. So this is what we're going to start with, is the sand texture, and go ahead and we can fill it in right here. Next, what I will do is I'm going to lay a gradient right over the top of this. Actually, I'm just noticing too that that painted that on my background, so I'm going to undo. I want to create a new layer and make sure that you are doing this on a fresh layer. You always want to leave your background alone if you can, and we can, so we will. Here what I'm going to do right over the top, I'm going to add another new layer. So I have two layers. I'm going to make a gradient just to kind of overlay over this, this layer here, and kind of maybe take colors sort of similar to this, kind of a copper feel. And I'm going to overlay this gradient right over the sand that I already have. And I want it to go from dark to light, opposite direction though. And like this. What I'm going to do is go into my layer styles and change that layer style to screen. So what that is kind of adding a little, you know, a little bit different lightness to my sand texture here. You know, making it a little bit not just kind of all the same tone of sand. It has a little bit of variety to it. So that looks pretty good. It got a little bit bright at the top. So what I'm going to do is undo again. I'm going to start this gradient a little lower and take it off the page actually a little bit more so it's not as bright on top. Again, I'm going to go to layer styles, not color dodge, although you will, if you play around with some of these other effects, you get some interesting things. I'm going to stick with screen for now. I think that works pretty well. I'm going to deselect and I'm going to go ahead and add my next layer. This one's actually going to be behind this one, so underneath. I'm going to take my selection brush again. I'm going to make kind of another layer of mountains or hills behind this one. Again, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take my fill bucket, I'm going to take the sand pattern, and I'm going to fill it in. Okay, so that's going to just show me a little bit more behind there. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take another layer above it. I'm going to select my gradient tool, and again, I'm going to fill this gradient right up here and do that screen fill, and there we have it. So again, I want this to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to kind of start my gradient up higher to make that a little bit darker. And again, this layer I want to turn into a screen layer so that it's overlapping. And there we go, we got a pretty good sense of space and depth from one layer to the next, so it looks like there's another sand dune off into the distance. Okay, so that pretty much does it for my foreground. That works for now. You may find that, if you have too much, you may want to erase a little bit. That actually, I was just erasing my gradient, so it was kind of giving me a little bit darker tone at the top of those hills, which is kind of nice. And I will kind of stick with that and roll with it. So next thing to go with is we're going to want to add in another layer, this one all the way at the bottom. This one is going to be kind of our sky layer. So I'm going to go ahead and label this sky for now. We're going to take a gradient again, and this time either choose a gradient with lots of colors or make one of your own, at least 4 colors. So we'll take this gradient with 4 different colors on it. That one will work for me. And I'm going to start this here and kind of just fill it up and make kind of a background, kind of soft sky kind of going there. And I actually want it to go the opposite way, so the blue is at the bottom and the pinks and reds and orange are at the top. I'm going to go even further with that. So you just see a little bit of the blue and then mostly the other colors. Okay, that works pretty good. What I'm going to do above that now, actually before that, I want to show you another new tool, and that is the smudge tool. So right here, if we go down, you might see the blur tool. If you hold down on the blur tool and go down to smudge, you're going to get a smudge tool here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some texture kind of going on in the sky by just kind of smudging, blending these colors together. So you can kind of start on the bottom and kind of smudge up, and that's going to kind of take your color, lift it, and carry it around. And you want to get some kind of movement in your lines in the sky, some kind of overlap some. And here you can really feel free to experiment and kind of play around with different size smudges. It doesn't have to be much rhyme or reason to the smudging here, just kind of letting it go. And maybe even you can watch how smudging down will bring colors down. And you can smudge and blend some of the spots in that gradient together and get some interesting kind of texture in your sky. I kind of like how just bringing this kind of blue part up into the sky creates this sort of like a sandy tornado type feel. I'm just going to add a couple more here. And that looks pretty good. What I'm going to also do to this layer is I'm going to add a lens flare. So we went over lens flares in our last project, our spacescape. So I'm going to go to Filter and Render and add a lens flare, kind of like a sun up in the sky, far off star maybe. And I think for this one, I actually like this 50 zooms option. And I do kind of like the positioning there. It looks like it's sort of in the middle of all that swirlingness. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and maybe even take my smudger and continue to smudge some more of this kind of background around here, so that the sun or the star is kind of the center point. So also over that layer, I'm going to add another technique that we learned in our last project. I'm going to add some clouds. So I'm going to go ahead, filter, render, and just do normal clouds this time on a blank layer. So I've got a new blank layer. Remember that. Layer by itself. Going to render clouds. And I had kind of this pinkish color selected. You could experiment and have any color there really. What I'm going to do again is take that color, go ahead and change it to a screen overlay. And I was really hoping I would see more behind that. But what I'm going to do instead is take my eraser I'm going to erase and reveal some of that and leave some of the clouds behind. So again, make sure you have a brush with a soft edge. Alright, and we can go ahead and kind of erase, kind of open up the sky a little bit more and take out some of these clouds so that we can see that sun, everything going on behind there a little bit more. Okay, kind of makes our sky so it's not so bright. Kind of nice to see the actual color back there. I'm going to bring back some of those because I think I kind of liked this. It's almost like a foggy mist coming off of the back there. Okay, so that is pretty good for now. Now what we'll look at is creating a new layer right on top, and this is where we're going to make our pyramid. So I'm going to go ahead and label this pyramid. And what we'll do is we will need to draw with our poly lasso. So we're going to take our poly lasso, we'll go ahead and draw a triangular shape here. And this triangular shape should have a pretty vertical straight line axis down the middle. Okay, and what we're going to do is, again, we're going to take that and fill it with a pattern. So this time, let's see, we've already used the sand pattern. We'll go into our rock patterns like we were saying before and look for something maybe a little different to use. So here we have a rock wall, dirt, textured tile, light marble. These are a little light. I might try this rock wall kind of texture, see what this does. And that works pretty good for me. I like that. It stands out, it's dark. And so what we're going to need to do is go ahead and take that and flip it. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take our layer, we will duplicate this layer. So we'll make another copy, so there's one right above it, and then we will also go to layer, or rather image, rotate, and we just want to flip that section selection, or flip the layer horizontal. Oh, right, that did my whole image. So instead, we will take rotate, we will say flip selection horizontal, and that will do what we need. So here we can take our move tool, move this into place. It may take a little rotating to get it to line up quite right. So that's good for now. And kind of zoom in here and check this out. So I'm going to take this and maybe stretch it out just a little bit and rotate it, get it to line up nice with this other side of it. Now, if we're looking at this in regards to where the light is coming from, we would probably want to note that this side is a little bit closer to the sun, so this layer, we're going to want this side to actually be filled a little bit lighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this side and I'm going to go to adjust the hue saturation, and I'm just going to change this one a little bit so it's a little bit different. The other one, maybe make it not necessarily a different color, but just a little bit lighter actually. So I'm going to make it just a little bit lighter so you can see a little bit more of light hitting that side. And then with this side, again, you want to just kind of window click on this layer to give you your selection back. Enhance, go to color, just hue saturation, make this side a little bit darker. Okay, and then really the last thing we want to add in is a shadow coming off this side. So again, you want to take your poly lasso and we will go ahead and fill this with, let's say, a lighter brown. Take a look at brown tone. You can fill it. Oops. So that was still on pattern. So I need to uncheck pattern. Go ahead, fill that in. And what I would do with this is also do maybe a screen overlay. Oh, see, we are on the same layer here. So I want to back up a step. New layer. This shadow, then I will do again a screen layer style. Or maybe actually, in this instance, darken. Interesting. So play around with these kind of options here as far as layer styles go. Overlay, that works pretty well. It's not quite giving me what I was looking for. So there we go, multiply. So multiply is what I was really looking for. We'll go ahead and move that in a little bit closer to the pyramid so that it is actually attached. We'll deselect, and there you have it. That is a pretty finished pyramid landscape. So go ahead, have fun with this, and I hope you have success.